I'd like to talk a little more about Xcode and Swift, and we're working our way through this weather app here, and one of the things we're going to need to do is work with some functions. And a function is sort of an active part of the program, and where variables hold a value and they don't really do anything, they just sit there until you need the value. Functions, on the other hand, you call on them and they do something. They take action, okay? So to test and learn how to work with functions, we're going to use a playground. So I'm going to go to the File menu here and choose, oops, I'm in QuickTime there. Let me click on Xcode and choose New Playground. And you can name this playground anything you want. Maybe I'll call it Function Playground. And then I'll save it to one of my folders here. Maybe I'll save it to, I think I have a folder full of playgrounds here somewhere. I thought I did. I guess I got them all in this folder here. I'll just save it there. Okay. So here's the default playground. And let's imagine that we wanted to convert, let's say, Celsius to Fahrenheit. Okay, so what if we had a variable here called temperature F for Fahrenheit, and it's 0 right now. And then we have another variable called temperature C for Celsius, and it's 23 degrees. Okay? And what I want to do is I want to convert this into Fahrenheit. So, I might say temp F equals, and it's going to be what is it? It's going to be temp C times 1.8 plus 32. And I'm going to get an error here because this is a floating point number or a double, and this is an integer value. And when I multiply the two, like the computer says, well, you know what, these are two different types and you're not allowed to do this kind of math with them, right? It says int is not convertible to double, right? So what I should do is when I define these, I kind of, was a little bit vague in how I define them. So I should do one of two things. I should either make this look like a double, or I should declare it with the type, the explicit type of double, like that. Okay? And now you can see that the computer is happy to do the math here. Okay? This, I'm not quite sure how the computer reads this, but I'm assuming since we put it in here, it's kind of implicit that this is, becomes a double because the rest of the math here is a double, right? But, if you wanted to make sure, you could put a dot, and a 0 on the end, right? Okay, so, I like that, but the thing is, oftentimes, the temperature of 23 degrees is not going to be the temperature. Like, we don't know what the temperature is. We're going to get a temperature, and we're going to want to convert it into Fahrenheit. So, rather than, using the same value every time, what we want to do is we want to create a function that we can call on and have it return the temperature to us, right? So we might do something like this. We might say function C for for Celsius to F for Fahrenheit, okay? So here's our function, and maybe I might do something like this. I could put, this inside here, and what I've done is I've defined a function. So function begins with the keyword func, F-U-N-C, followed by a name. And the name can be anything you like. It's convention to start with a lowercase letter, and then the rest of the name can be upper or lowercase letters. You can't start with a number, and you can't use special characters in the name. And then you follow with the parentheses and then the curly braces. And the curly braces define a code block. So the function is essentially encapsulating a block of code that can be executed later. And you can see that, it's maybe not obvious, but the calculation here hasn't been executed, and so we don't see the answer in the sidebar. Okay, why is that? Well, functions, when you create them, they define a block of code, but they don't actually run that block of code. In order to run the block of code, you need to invoke the function by calling its name. So to invoke the function here, I'm going to call on, C to F, and then that's going to run the function up here. Okay, and now you can see that it shows me the value because that function's been run once. And if I do it again, it'll run the function a second time. And it tells me that, oh yeah, that function's been called twice. Okay, so every time I call the name, I can call the function again. Okay, and so that works pretty good. Of course, the problem here is that I'm always doing the calculation based on the temperature of, contained in this variable here. So it's always the same answer every time. What I want to do is I want to create a more flexible function that I could use in any circumstance to convert any Celsius value into a Fahrenheit value, right? So how are we going to do that? Let's go up here to our function. And functions can take parameters, right? So parameters go inside the parentheses here. So I'm going to say temp F is a double, there we go, right? And when we do, actually, I'm going C to F. Let me do temp C here is a double. And then I'm going to convert temp C into a Fahrenheit temperature, okay? Now, I'm getting an error here because these are saying, like, hey, you're missing an argument for parameter number 1. So this is the parameter right here, and note that I use the same variable name, but actually this parameter is a different variable as far as the computer's concerned. Like, if this is inside here, it belongs to this function, and it's different from the one here, okay? So we can even just delete this for now, okay? So it's saying, like, hey, you got this parameter here, but you haven't told me what the value is for that parameter. Okay, so to give that parameter value, you can type in the value here. So I'll say, okay, for temperature 23 degrees Celsius, and this is going to be 23, and then we'll do the calculation on it. Okay, and now it's giving me an error here that says this is not right. So what if we say 11 degrees Celsius, and then for the last one, we'll do it, 44 degrees. Okay, now you can see this was executed 3 times, and there's no error. Okay, now it gave me a different answer every time. If we want to see the answer, we can click on the little eyeball here, I guess, or the plus button there. And you can see it graphs out the answer. So it's not really telling me what the values were, but those are like the 23 degrees, the 11 degrees, and the 44 degrees, right? And it's giving me the value here on this scale is in Fahrenheit, right? Let's close this up for a moment and print the value out, right? Okay. So how can we print the value? Well, we can say one way is to print, right? So I can say print ln, and then I'll say print temp f. Okay. And then we can see here, here's the values there, right? 73, 51, and 111. Okay? This works okay, but in an actual program, the print line function isn't really going to do anything for us, right? It's just for testing and for, displaying values, in the console, but the console doesn't really exist in our finished program, so that's not really going to do anything for us. What we want to do is we want to print and display the value on the screen, right? So in order for that to work, we need to rearrange our function here so that it can return a value to us, right? So functions can receive values, and you can put a value that they're going to receive. We call it a parameter. It goes in the parentheses here. And in Swift, when a function returns a value at behind the parentheses, but before the curly bracket here, you put the dash and the little arrow. and then you follow it with the name of the type that your function is going to return. So in my case, I want to return a double. Okay, so a double is like a decimal number. Okay, so I'll say, you know, let's return a double. And now I'm getting an error because my function doesn't actually return anything. It says missing return in function. So expected to return a double. So if I want to return my double, I'm going to have to say return and then the value that I want to return. And in my case, that's going to be temperature in Fahrenheit. Okay, I'm going to get rid of this print statement there. And now you can see when I call on the function here, the value returned was 73. And when I call on the function here, the value is 51.8. And when I call on the function here, the value returned is 111.2. Okay, so that's how functions work in Swift. That's a quick, simple overview. Give you an idea there. So functions, you know, they begin with the keyword func. You can put a name for your function here. Your function can receive a value, use the colon and the type for that value. And then if your function is going to return a value, you can put the dash and the arrow followed by the type that it returns. And inside the curly braces, you can execute any number of lines of code, and then you can finish off with return. And when the function hits return, that ends the function. So any code after return will not be executed, just as a note there. Okay? So anyway, there's a quick overview of using functions in Swift.